What's going on, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to a beautiful episode of the Deconstructing Topic Podcast. My name is David, and I'm the host of this beautiful, interesting podcast where we touch it all. And in this episode, my podcast is called Topics, so that means we talking topics. But today, we have an interesting episode because we are be talking about a historic figure, a poet. There's so much words to describe this individual, this beautiful lady, and it's someone that resonates with me. And life is crazy because we all have a connection somewhere, somehow in life, either in a moment of chaos where I'm going through at the moment, I am going through. Your boy, Deconstructing Topic Podcast, is going through a tumultuous time. And I love it. And why I said to myself, what better other person? And I'm trying to find balance here. And trying to find balance in life and trying to find balance in my podcast to talk it all. But we also want to do that this podcast is very informative. And today we are talking about none other than Julia de Burgos. And I don't even know where to start. Now, Julia de Burgos, that's her stage name or shortened. So Julia Constanza de Burgos Garcia is a Puerto Rican poet, journalist, teacher. She's, oh my God, the title. She did all that. And she was born on February 17, 1914. So once again, little applause here and a little bit of, as I welcome people that shape my life somewhere, somehow. And definitely, when I say people, and I'm talking about like outside of the scope of the people that are listening to my podcast, which I appreciate, which I love how you are sharing and hitting the like. I wish, hey, listen, I'll be honest, the little comments, I bring them on. I love to kind of engage with the audience here, with my family who's listening to this. And in that scope of things, there are people that shape me that's outside of that circle of my life. And Julia de Burgos, for some reason, oof. Now, my thing is this. I'm going to do a little brief introduction. Oh, I take it back. This podcast, it's going to be like a little introduction. It's not going to be crazy. She is a poet. She does have a lot of wonderful writings. And I kind of felt, and this is me, is that I would have loved to kind of read some of her poems in this episode. But I decided, you know what? Her work, it's her work. And I will be doing another podcast real soon, probably within a episode of this one or two episodes, in which I will be reading some of her work. And let me tell you something. Why is this person important in my life and important in the life of my family? Now, it's going to be a little bit personal here, a little personal as I open up here. My family, my mother, survivors of domestic violence. And for those people, even those people that know me, when it comes to domestic violence, I'm very vocal because it's something that hits our community. It hits the Black community the most, and it hits the Latin community second in United States here. So it's one of those things that I've always been vocal about. Hey, we must protect women, and we must do a better job because domestic violence in the household plays a lot. And keep in mind, this also happened to men. So, hey, just want to bring that up. So it's something it's an issue that's very endearing to me because it does affect many things in a household, especially me, the son of a survivor. Well, at that time was a victim of domestic violence, but a survivor of that of my mother and my siblings who are older than me. We went through a lot as young kids. And one of the things that happened in Puerto Rico, I was born in Puerto Rico, just like Julia de Burgos. Woo! Let's go. She was born in Carolina. I was born in Bayamón. I believe I was born in Rio Piedra. Hey, listen, I got to talk to some couple of people's. I got to check my birth certificate again. But because of the situation that happened to my mother in the 80s, back then, when we was living in Puerto Rico, we wind up, or let's just say my mother, grabbed us and wind up going to a refuge. And that refuge was called Julia de Burgos, or La Casa de Julia de Burgos. And my mother, I believe, was the first person in that place. I believe that's what she mentioned to me. And it's interesting because that name, Julia de Burgos, stuck with me, and it's like it's a scar. And hey, I'm not trying to say nothing crazy about that. It's just something where it's physically, it's there, it's ingrained, it's imprinted in your mind, your heart and soul. With Julia de Burgos, once again, the poet, journalist, and a teacher. And sadly, she died at a young age of 39 in New York City on July 6, 1953. And we're going to touch a little story on that. Julia de Burgos, they name a lot of, so, and I'm going to go back to the situation with my mother. Is that then, Julia de Burgos, it's a very interesting character. There's a lot of cultural arts in, I believe, somewhere in Cleveland, Ohio, Chicago, New York City, anywhere where there's prominent populations of Puerto Rican, there will be something that will be named after her, streets, cultural arts, because the impact that she have made. Now, this is my thing. Because of some certain stories, unfortunately, we kind of have separated. And, how can I say, the arts of poetry have kind of changed, and it's no longer something where top 5 where when it comes to art, we have music. Now we have paintings. Now we have other things that might have occupied that space that poetry had a long time ago, where poetry was one of the main arts where people sit down, listen, whatever. And I'm not trying to say that it's not popular, but what I'm saying is that people have kind of, used other means of art. And to know that the situation that happened to us and happened to my family, happened to my mother, at that time being a victim of domestic violence and being a survivor of domestic violence, for those ladies and men out there, much love. I'm here. I'm listening. That's why I created this podcast, so we could all help each other collectively. And that name, Julia de Burgos, stood and always stood in our family's history, and it always stood in our mind. That's why I said to myself, and I believe this might be the first Puerto Rican, how can I say, individual in which I always said that I'm going to do a lot of other podcasts in regards to other people from my history, my country, but other countries, people need to know. Hey. So with that said, that connection with Julia de Burgos, she's a poet, an artist. She was a feminist before the feminist movement, way before it was co-opted by these corporations, these people with money. She was a advocate of the independence of Puerto Rico back in the 1940s, back then, before they got co-opted. She was the daughters of the freedom fighting of whatever, the Puerto Rican, I'm not going to say whatever, I'm just saying Puerto Rican Nationalist Party. She was part of a lot of movement out there. And one of the things, and I read some of her poems before, that's why I want to do like a separate podcast. I want to read some of her poems, some of her work, some of her art. Beautiful. It hits. And I'm going to tell you why her story, it hits me. And again, she's been out there. She has so many titles, this wonderful person. I believe that she is the eldest of, 13 kids, something to that effect. So, hey, listen, she has a lot to carry on her back. And the fact that because of the situation that happened at my household and the household that I grew up, to end up with Julia de Burgos, the poet, once again, it made me think that there was a time, and think about this. She was born in Puerto Rico, and she made her way into New York City. And that reminds me of a kid by the name of David, who's a host of Deconstructing Topic Podcast. Now, with that said, I'm not going to forget that my mother also did a little bit of poetry as well. I do remember that. Shout out to my mother. And my sister too, believe it or not. There's some art there. You know what I'm saying? There's a connection there. And my brother's an artist in his own little way. He got a little thing going on. He does take time to try to draw something. But it's interesting how that art, we got it from my mother and a little bit of my father as well. who passed away a long time during the 80s, long time. But, unfortunately, he was the aggressor in regards to the situation that I'm speaking of. And we get to this household where it looks like the seeds of my future has been kind of said, if started in my mother's womb, it was reminded me through where we was living in La Casa de Julia de Burgos. And as I tell this little story in regards to her situation, doing a little bit of research, because, sadly, and I'll be honest with you, it took me a while to kind of, how can I say, let me learn a little bit more about this individual. I know who she was. I know who she is. Am I understanding that, she's a legend with over 200 poems. I got a lot of poems myself, but unfortunately with time, I lost some of them. I'm trying to go on the internet, see if I could find some that I published 20, 25 years ago. Hey, listen, if somebody could help me out here, I appreciate it. And lately, I've been going back to my creative side of poetry. And that's another beautiful podcast there. And if one of those things if that situation in a moment of chaos where this group of family has enduring and trying to survive one of the worst moments in their lives, there goes that story of Julia de Burgos. And when I started to learn more about Julia de Burgos, there's a story and a sad story that led to her death that it hit me, and to this day, it hit me. Now, I want people to understand when it comes to artists, any means, whether you're a painter or a poet or a singer or a stand-up comedian, whatever craft that you use to express that art, whatever platform, a lot of us, when it comes to writing, and say for those who like to enjoy writing, sometimes we hit a nerve. And when we hit that nerve, it's like we open a wound of something of our past, and something that hits. And that's the thing with us artists, is that why so many of us struggle, and why so many of us go and find that little escape, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or other means, betting, whatever bad vice, we just go to it. Ladies and gentlemen, people in the middle, people, whoever it is out there that's listening. In the case of Julia de Burgos, unfortunately, she did enjoy alcohol. And she was, by any stretch, not a lonely person. My understanding, she married a couple of times. She had a couple of relationships. She was a beautiful person. And I'm going to put the link. And I want people to not only share this nice little thing that we got going on, because it does hit me. And when I was hearing about that story, it hit me because there are times that I do tend to find that alcohol, it's an escape. As much as I would say I'm enjoying it, like I tell a lot of people that know me, I'm networking. I am networking, meaning I hit a place, I hit a bar, I hit a restaurant, I'm talking about my podcast, I'm doing this, but at the end of the day, I have a bill of $150, $60 that I spent all networking, and there's people that enjoy my companionship that they say, I got you, drinks on me, what you drinking? So that means I probably would have spent over $200 on liquor on one sitting in one night. But then you start to realize, David, are you really networking? Or are you just drowning your sorrows? And when I was reading about that situation with Julia de Burgos, that she was drinking her sorrows, as she was writing, and I always find interesting in life that sometimes, and I always said, the one thing that's killing us is the one thing that's keeping us alive. And the one thing that's keeping us alive is the one thing that's killing us. Julia de Burgos was just drowning her sorrows through drinking. And again, I don't want people to think, well, do you think that's a selfish act? Do you think whatever? Again, as an artist, and those people out there that are in the platform of expressing themselves through whatever art, sometimes we get stuck. We have that war. Sometimes we say to ourselves, what the hell? How can I cure this pain that I feel? I just wrote, I just drew, I just sang, I just did the most masterpiece of all masterpieces. And I'm here feeling sadness. And when you feel that sadness, you find a way for a cure. And Julia de Burgos, as the story goes, one night she was in a bar, drinking and drinking and drinking her sorrows, her heartbreak. My understanding is that even though, despite she has married a couple of times, even though she has relationships, even though she preached feminism, and her feminism was that I don't need to belong to somebody, despite that she always felt that in order to find balance, she needs to be with somebody. And in the case of Julia de Burgos, a lot of those relationships, they all ended up in heartbreak. And unfortunately, as she was drinking, one day, she got sick in the rain and died of pneumonia. They found her in the streets of Manhattan, laying down, dead, at the age of 39, on July 6, 1953. You know, that hit hard, that hits. I'll be honest with you. When I read that years ago, when I heard about that story so long time ago, it hit me because I felt that way. And it hit me because there's stories. And in my podcast, all I've been telling people is stories. And I appreciate people listening to me because you are my family. You are going to share this. You're going to hit the like button. You're going to feel comment. And we're going to just collectively be there for each other. But it did hit me hard to realize how sometimes there are that connection to that person through the chaos, a moment of chaos that I went through as a child, to think that I was in a way living in a way through her spirit of what she went through. Because I also deal with a lot of heartaches. And you could say that I'm dealing with a little situation that's hitting different than any other situation it's hitting. But you see, I'm going to the gym. I'm doing my thing. I love my job. I'm back writing, but I'm trying to avoid and cut down on this networking and drinking. Hey, I can network. I'm just saying, I can network. But David, relax with the drinks, because you're going to be drowning your sorrow. And sometimes what happened to Julia de Burgos, she already did her deeds and she already cemented a legacy in this world. And people know who she was, and people knew who she was. I mean, sadly, this is not a situation where somebody had to die in order for one to say, oh man, No, when she lived, she went all out, and she was considered one of the best poets in the Caribbean and Latin nations in South America, Mexico, and all. Woo, let's go. And in the United States, of course. But it definitely hits hard. And that's why I'm dedicating this podcast. Not just to my mother, to my family, my sister, my brother, myself. For those people out there who are going through a lot. Those artists who are going through a lot, through emotional times. Especially for those who are writing. That's my thing. I'm here. For every Julia de Burgos, there's going to be people like me that's going to be the voice of hope. And I'm going to fight. And I'm going to fight on your behalf. And I'm going to speak on your behalf. I'm here. I'm dedicating that to all individuals out there, those artists out there. I love you all. And we've got to make it happen. Because unfortunately in life, we just cannot explain certain things. But the one thing that we can do together, just like Julia de Burgos, is to just write and express ourselves. And please do not allow yourself to fall into a trap where your life is cut short to whatever the danger or the vice you get on. I'm here. All my links, whether it's my Instagram, my email. If anybody want to reach out to me and talk, let's make it happen. Once again, this is Deconstructing Topic Podcast. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, because we definitely going to make it happen. Much love. I'm out of here. Peace.